Hello and welcome back to the Cubase Fundamentals course. Over the next couple of episodes, we're going to have a dive into chords and scales. Now this is a vast subject inside Cubase and there's a lot of stuff that I never use. So I'm going to try to show you the most practical, what I think are the most useful features. If you want to follow along with this project step by step, check out the Patreon link below. That's also the best way to help support me and my channel. Okay, let's get on with it. The first thing that we need to do is create a chord track. If we go to our little plus button, and you need to drop this More Tracks feature down, and here we have a chord track, and you can see that we're only allowed one of these per project. Let's add it, and it's probably right down here we are at the bottom of the project. Because this is meta track information, I always put it in the top window, and I'm going to leave it grey. So this is usually, if I create a chord track, this is where I'm going to put it, underneath my markers. What does this let us do? Well, there are two purposes to the chord track as far as I'm concerned. One is informational. It helps me to remember what chords I've played. I'd already forgotten the chords of this song and had to relearn them because my brain's like a sieve. But secondly, you can actually get some really cool functionality out of it. The first thing that we're going to do is create ourselves a new prologue track. So I'm going to go back into Instrument, I'm going to select Prologue. The audio outputs is going to be the keys master because this is a keys instrument, and once we've clicked the Add Track button, we get a new instance of the instrument, and I'm going to select Piece Piano. So very helpfully, it's put this track in the wrong place as well. Let's move that down, and let's name it Piece Piano. So this is like an electric keyboard kind of affair. I've got set quite quiet at the moment. There we go. Having done that, we can now map that instrument to our chord track. You see where it says Use Monitored Tracks, select Piece Piano, and if you select the chord track, just make sure that you've got this little button clicked. It's on by default, but it says acoustic feedback. Just make sure that's turned on. And that's basically now linked the chord track to this Piece Piano instrument. So what we're going to do over the course of today's episode is use that electric piano sound to create a backing track with just the basic chords of the song. I want to loop around the first 8 bars, so I can simply select anything that's 8 bars long and press P, and then I can zoom in. I've just noticed I've got one of the more advanced features currently enabled. See this little cyan button that says Show Scales. I'm just going to turn that off for now. We'll deal with that in the next episode. I'm going to get my pencil tool, and at bar 5, which is the beginning of the song, I'm just going to click the pencil, and you can see I've now got this X. So that's like a placeholder. It's saying I'm going to insert a chord here, but I haven't yet told Cubase what chord to make it. Get back to my standard sizing tool and double click, and this brings up the chord editor. So I'm now going to tell Cubase that this is a C major chord, and that sound that you heard is that Piece Piano prologue instrument being played. I'm going to click outside the window. I'm going to show you more efficient ways to do all of this stuff shortly, but just for now, let's keep it nice and simple. The C major plays for a couple of bars, and then we get an A minor. So I select A for the root note, minor for the chord type, and close that down. The third chord in the sequence begins at bar 9, and it's an F major. And then for the next chord, I'm going to show you one of the more efficient ways to work rather than keeping coming out and going back in again. At the top right hand corner, we've got this little plus button. So now I'm going to click that instead. Now it's put the chord on bar 10, and that's default behavior. If you ask it to auto insert a chord, it'll basically put it 1 bar in front, but the next chord actually begins on bar 11, and it's a G7. So what I'm going to do is mute all the current instrument tracks. So I'm just left with the Piece Piano with no information in the track and the drums. That's all we've got. Go back to the beginning of the song and press play. So it's playing those chords. Oh, selected something that was slightly longer than the bar. Okay, so we've already got some pretty cool functionality. We've now got Cubase able to play chords without us having to type those notes in manually. Let's extend those concepts a little bit further, see what else we can do. I'm going to select this C, head into the chord editor. You see my little plus button has disappeared. You only get the ability to add a new chord at the very end of the sequence, basically the last chord in the entire chord track. Gives you the opportunity to add an extra one on, but you can't insert chords in the middle. But what I want to do is make this initial chord C major 7 for an extra little bit of flavour. If I select that, this is called a tension. You can see it says C major 7. Now, the default behaviour and appearance of this chord map can be found in the preferences screen. So let's have a look at that. Here it is, event display, chords and pitches. And this is where you get to see all of those defaults that you're seeing in the chord display. So how do we want major 7s to be represented? Minors, and so on and so on. I pretty much leave all of them as default. I'm fairly happy with most of them. If you like the plus symbol for augmented, you can select it here. You can also define your own custom chords down here. I've never bothered, quite frankly. If I'm doing exotic chords, I'll just put them in by hand, but you can. If you wanted to create like something for the Hendrix chord, you know, the 7 sharp 9, you could do that and create it here. So now, having started the song with a C major 7, I'm going to insert a chord at bar 6 and make this a regular C major. See what that sounds like. That's nice. Let's make this A minor and A minor 7. Lovely. Then I'm going to get a little bit more exotic when we're on the F. So I've just created myself a placeholder here. We'll have an F major 7. And now, having edited this one, I want to turn the next chord, which is currently a default just unmapped chord. I want to make this an F major 9, but I don't want to have to come out of the screen and double click to get back in, and I don't need to. When you're inside the chord editor, if you press the right arrow button, it automatically jumps to the next chord and you can edit it from there. And then we can make this an F major 7, and then in order to turn it into a 9, a major 9, we add an extra tension, so you can have multiple tensions on the chord. Now this is how Cubase represents it, but that's an F major 9. Just shrink it a little bit so that I'm not in the way. So over here, I don't want the G7 for the entire 2 bars. I'm going to insert a new chord. I'm going to make this one a regular G, and then the following chord is going to be my G7. And that's my entire chord sequence. Excellent. Now, it's a little bit restrictive to have these default chords only ever play exactly that. We can actually crystallize them into real MIDI notes. If you select the chords in your chord track and pick them up, if you head over to any MIDI track, you can see that we've now got the ability to drop them, and it turns them all into real chords. Now, can you see that the length of the chords is all correct? That's only because I've selected multiple chords simultaneously. I'm just going to undo that process, and this time I'm just going to drag a single chord down onto the track. See this A minor 7, it lasts for 2 bars. If I pick that up and drop it onto the piano track, it will only make the chord 1 bar long. Because it doesn't have a context and it doesn't know where the next chord starts, as far as the MIDI information is concerned, this is basically a single isolated chord, in which case it will create it for 1 bar long. So it's generally much easier to pick groups of them up, and then it extends each chord up to the beginning of the next chord. Having done that, we need to do something to shut the chord track up. What I typically do is just mute it, because now we've got real data. If I click on any of these chords, you'll still hear the monitored chord, so we're still using the monitor feature, but now when we're playing the song in real time, it's not going to play these chords back. We're going to hear the data out of the piece piano track. And there they all are. Let's see what else we can do. This F major 7 over here. I'm just going to delete the equivalent chord and head back into the chord editor. Down at the bottom of this window, you can see that it says MIDI input. So I can overwrite this chord simply by playing notes on the keyboard. If I play a regular F major and then let go, it turns it into an F major. So you hear it playing the chord. It doesn't update until you let the chord go. It's actually responding to the note off signals. So I'll play my F major 7 now, and then let go, and it turns it into an F major 7. So I can kind of mess around with various chords, thinking, well, how do I want this chord to sound? Let's try that. Let it go. Turns it into a B dim over F. So it's not really an F chord at that point anymore. It's a B diminished, but it's the second inversion of B diminished. Let's try some other stuff. So there you can see the chord I've played, F, A, D, and it's interpreted that as a D minor over F. It's kind of an F6 with a missing fifth, but you know, they're all just names. Cubase is doing its best to interpret what I've played. It doesn't matter that I'm playing an F as the lowest note, it's just interpreting that as a slash chord. So it's actually very good at identifying chord names. I generally basically just leave it to get on with whatever it wants. Let's get us back to our F major 7 that I wanted. That's fine. And then once we're happy, drag it down. You can also type chord names in this little text box in the bottom right hand corner. I could type F7 and it'll turn it into an F7. F major 7. So it's pretty good at interpreting whatever you type in. Just try to be sensible with your chord namings and it'll more often than not get it right. For the sake of simplicity, for the next couple of episodes, I'll leave all of the guitar stuff muted, but we will go back to this original melody line that we had plugged in, and let's hear what those two things sound like together. I do like that little interaction of the chords just around bar 12. That's quite nice. So this is really the sweet spot of the chord track for me. As we'll see in the next episode, it's much more powerful than this, and there's an absolute slew of stuff we can do with the chord track. But at its core, it's really convenient for showing me what chords I'm playing in the song. I want to jam over the top of it on the guitar. I've now got something to remind me what the chords are, but also as a functional tool to very quickly just drag those chords down onto the track and get you up and running. You know, don't try to overcomplicate it. I think it's one of these simple is best philosophies. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Please hit the like button if you did. I'll see you for the next one. Thanks a lot.